what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. Subscribe to Saturday Down South on YouTube. I'm Conor O'Gara. Will, who do you think has the internet buzzing more right now? Lane Kiffin and his current whereabouts, wherever that might be, or everyone on the selection committee that's attempting, well, mainly Hunter Yurachek, attempting to explain whatever backwards logic they're using for the college football playoff poll?
These guys are, bless their hearts, they're editorializing this year. They're trying to get a book deal.
They kind of are. Editorializing, that is the right verb to describe it. Just flawed, head-to-head matters here, it doesn't matter there. That Notre Dame ranking, I thought after the Miami thing, it was pretty ridiculous. After Notre Dame coming in ahead of Alabama, it's just like, okay, they don't know what they're doing. They have no idea what they're doing. Oh, this metric says this here, blah, blah, blah. Buddy, Bama's Florida State loss didn't count, and now it does because they're a two-loss team, and all of a sudden Bama having 4 wins against teams that are in the current CFP top 25 doesn't matter, but Notre Dame's winning streak matters, even though like the combined conference records 13 and 27 of the power conference teams they beat. Anyway, I guess the playoff rankings had me more buzzing than Lane Kiffin and his family flying to Baton Rouge and Gainesville.
Well, that makes one of us. Connor, can I drop a hot take in here really quick?
Fire away.
So I think that in their incredible links to explain why Alabama was behind Notre Dame this year, they went ahead and exposed previous committees of just picking Nick Saban. Because everything, and I know that every committee is different.
Too, Will. I had this thought too.
Okay, good. So we're both conspiratory here. That's good. Because, if you have to give these, 200 words of prose, editorializing like we've talked about, and they go in conflict of pretty much everything we've ever heard that's previously gotten Alabama into these situations, right? You talked about 2017, talking about them hopping Georgia after Georgia was a repeat champion. None of that made sense at the time. And so now they're going back and using like the most finite logic. And to me, it says a couple of things, right? It says, number one, that logic was truly out the window. So they fully exposed the previous committees. And number two, it says that aura has been diminished a little bit, and it stinks because I do think Alabama's a good team this year, and I think they do deserve the benefit of the doubt. They've done more with those 4 straight ranked losses, and I'm a hater,
2023, it wasn't the hopping of Georgia. They beat Georgia in the SEC championship. It was the fact they were able to fend off Florida State and the fact that they were still able to make it into the Final Four, which I actually argued for Alabama. Like I've had years where I've thought Alabama's case was ridiculous. 2022, like when their best win was against a 4-loss Ole Miss team. Like there have been times in which I've looked at Alabama and gone, you're crazy for thinking you're in. And then I've also banged the drum and said this year, I think it's kind of ridiculous that they'd be ranked behind Notre Dame. And that if the season ended today, they would be considered the last team in, which with the ACC champ, that would, jump into the top 12 group of 5, highest ranked group of 5 conference champ as well. So yeah, it's just weird. And I saw something from USA Today. I was like, wait a minute, does Bama even control its own destiny? Because if BYU wins the Big 12 championship and then all of a sudden, like Texas Tech ain't getting left out, probably not, as the number 5 team right now who has the built-in excuse of their lone loss was Baron Morton being out against Arizona State. And like they would, like we saw last year, the precedent with SMU of, hey, you're not going to fall out of the playoff for earning that extra game when there are other at-large teams that aren't earning the extra game. So I don't know. I wrote about this last night too, just like how ridiculous it is to just comprehend that logic and just to think, oh, well, Notre Dame, by virtue of facing 2 power conference bowl teams, is now in this position where they're just like sitting pretty all of a sudden, and they're very much like locked into a playoff berth as long as they don't puke on their shoes. It's just, I don't know what they're looking at this year with this stuff. Like I've kind of like almost thrown up my hands and like given up in some ways, because now they're looking at the quality of loss closer than they ever have. They just change the criteria all the time. Like they really do.
Yeah, and not to sit on this for too long, but I think this just kind of shows where we're at in the sport, and not the opinions of it, but the facts, right? Adam Spencer, our buddy and coworker, dropped his power rankings, right, for the SEC, and it's A&M 1, Georgia 2, Ole Miss 3, Oklahoma 4, Bama 5. Well, Oklahoma and Bama just played in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and Oklahoma beat them. So you can't say that Bama is a better team than Oklahoma. But you look at that, It's the 5th ranked, like best playing, best form team right now, and they have some of the best odds to win the SEC. And of course, that takes out the Florida State loss, all that different stuff. But it just shows how zany and kind of balanced this conference is right now.
Yeah, it is very much. Yeah, like I was asked on, I went on College Chaps podcast. Shout out to our friends overseas at the UK, in the UK with George Somerville, my guy. And he asked like basically, hey, who'd you pick to win the SEC championship? Like, what's your pick right now? Like reset expectations. I'm like, am I still going Bama? I think I'd probably still maybe go Bama, because if Georgia somehow finds a way in, and it ends up being a Bama Georgia, like rematch, I'd still probably pick Bama to do that. I don't know. Like it's a strange thing to comprehend right now. A lot of different ways it feels like this season can go for the Tide. But I thought that was the most egregious thing of everything that played out. I mean, I guess at least Oklahoma's ahead of Notre Dame, but still, what are we doing?
Yeah, like I said, it takes a lot for me to feel bad for the University of Alabama. But again, I find myself doing it. And yeah. I genuinely think they can say everybody doubted us, which is exactly what you want right now if you're DeBoer.
True. Very true. Great pod coming up. We've got Cake Week. It is here. Week 13. You're going to get screenshots galore of SEC matchups, even though it's like, well, matchups involving winning teams. Big Ten only has one. SEC only has one. What are we really doing here? But whatever. We're going to get Shehan Jeyarajah. He's going to join us in a little bit, talk through some coaching carousel stuff, playoff stuff, Texas Tech. He's been all over all things Texas Tech, so I thought it'd be a good time to bring him on kind of ahead of their run, and then lad of the week as well. But first, as we've been doing for the last few months, a quick word from our friends at Dabble. Guys, great time on the sports calendar. If you are into daily fantasy, or if you are one of those people that's been wanting to get into daily fantasy, Dabble is the place for you. It is one of the newest and best apps in the DFS space. They've wasted no time making a name for themselves. The social function, it is second to none. They offer a wide variety of sports making picks. We've got college football, we've got NFL, we've got NBA. Use promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $25 in bonus cash. No deposit required. Again, that is promo code SDS2 for $25 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. All right, well, 4 SEC matchups to get to today. Let's start with the one involving a couple of ranked teams. Number 22, Mizzou against number 8, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a 7.5 points favorite. The over-under I have is 7.5 Matt Zoller's completions. That's what he's averaging so far in his first 2 starts. The true freshman Mizzou quarterback. Not ideal. Well,
the ideal play for Mizzou is for him to hand the ball off. So hold on.
True. Very, very true. I would still like more completions, all things being equal. I think I would. Less eye black, more completions. I think they've been pretty solid on that from the jump. Maybe that's a boomer take. I don't know. Worth noting, Bo Perbula is back practicing on a limited basis. CBS reported earlier in the week that there was early optimism that he could return. Sounds kind of like Zollers would still be the starter in this one. Never rule that out. Again, I always mention we do this before injury reports. We're recording this Wednesday morning. Injury reports, by the time people are listening to this, Wednesday night, they're very often out. That's probably going to give us a better idea of how this is going to go. Not sure that you would want Bo Perbula on an expedited return against this Oklahoma defense, which has been terrorizing quarterbacks with or without our Mason Thomas. Go ask Joey Aguilar. Go ask Ty Simpson about that. Not a fun hang, this Oklahoma defense. Very aggressive. Brent Venables has been just licking his chops the last few weeks. The turnovers that they weren't forcing in the beginning of the season, those have been there. The havoc that we talked about last week, it's
here.
Very much so. Shaka Smart would be very proud of this group. After not forcing a single turnover those first 4 games, Oklahoma has forced multiple turnovers in 4 of the last 6, including 3 turnovers forced in the last 2 games. Problematic for Mizzou. That is, after Mizzou turned the ball over multiple times in each of Zoller's first 2 starts. In 4 of the last 5 games, that was with Bo Perbula as a starter in 3 of those games. Those 3rd and 7s for Mizzou, that's the danger zone of this game. That's where this game can really flip. The good news for Mizzou, as you mentioned, Ahmad Hardy, they have him. He's usually pretty good at keeping you out of 3rd and 7. He's up to 932 yards after first contact. He's going to hit 1,000 yards after first contact like he did last year. The 2-game stretch, though, that kind of took Hardy out of the Heisman conversation was against Bama and Auburn, both of whom have NFL run stoppers up front. Oklahoma has that too. Taylor Wine, a healthy R. Mason Thomas, as well as Kip Lewis, David Stone. Like, they've been really, really good against the run. Only 51 missed tackles against the run. That's the exact same number as Auburn. Bama has 41. That's good. That's really solid. Here's sort of the crazy thing, though. Oklahoma is the only defense that Hardy has seen so far this year who's currently in the top 20 in stop rate, the Max Olson metric that I always talk about, that I think gives you really good insight as to which one of these defenses is really kind of getting after it and kind of imposing their will and forcing you to play their style of game. I think that means tough sledding for Ahmad Hardy. I really do. Wouldn't surprise me if opening script favors Mizzou. Maybe not quite as crisp, hot knife through butter as that start was against Bama, but kind of similar where you're like, wait a minute, is Oklahoma a little bit hungover from the Bama win? Facing Ahmad Hardy while hungover is staying out until 3 a.m. and then going to a 5-year-old's birthday party the next morning. Don't do it.
That's a good one. Yep. That's very true. A very hard gentleman to tackle.
A lot of loud noises, a lot of things that you just think to yourself, I'd give anything to be anywhere but here in these moments.
Throw on some Coco Malone.
Coco Malone? Coco Melon.
No, I know. I was doing the voice, yeah.
Wait, what voice are we talking about here?
Oh, it's the Watermelon voice. It's like a meme from like 10 years ago. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. As someone who has watched a lot of Coco Melon since having a child, yes, I can confirm. Look, it's not always the best thing that you want to hear when that's repeated over and over. So Ahmad Hardy has the chance to be Coco Melon to Oklahoma, I guess. Brent Venables probably going to lose his voice. That's not a hungover reference, but just always seems to lose his voice.
I'm shocked he ever has a voice, honestly, because I only see him smiling and screaming.
Yeah, kind of no in between. He's not just a steady talk it out type of guy. Not much Tony Dungy. those guys, for whatever reason, like on the sideline, I see they're very, very different personalities, but like on the sideline, I see them as like the same person sometimes. No Tony Dungy type energy, needless to say. I think that Oklahoma is going to get a key takeaway in this one, and it's going to flip momentum. I'm going Sooners to win 24-20, but it's not pretty. It's not the type of game that Oklahoma is, hey, we absolutely are on a war path to the college football playoff. This is grinded out, another one-score SEC win that you're just kind of happy to survive.
I think for Mizzou, the game plan here is kind of simple, right? It's that you lean on Hardy and you see what the Oklahoma offense has against your defense. I think that the best key for Mizzou is to protect the football and not be too confident. You know, you look at Alabama and the ways that they struggle. Basically, Alabama and Mizzou are complete foils of each other, right? Where it comes to Alabama is comfortable taking chances, throwing the ball, coming up in big moments, but they can't run the ball. Mizzou can kind of only run the ball. They don't trust their quarterback. They don't really trust their wide receivers. And of course, Alabama has some great receivers that, one of them kind of let them down in that Oklahoma game. So I think not only because of how that game played out, but also because of your team's strengths, you want to play to your strengths and say, hey, to your point, go down opening drive, maybe a little bit of Texas against Georgia action, get your 33 plus rushing yards, get your still blowing my mind. Anyway, so you go down, run the ball. And even if you're playing field position, even if you don't have an opening script touchdown, you need to make Oklahoma possess the football, right? We saw even in the Bama win, wasn't like they were lighting it up with 300 plus yards of offense. And I think that the big thing, you would think to yourself, oh, I got to kind of zag on them. I got to give Zollers a ton of attempts. I got to spread the ball everywhere. That's exactly what Oklahoma wants you to do. Don't try that. It's not going to work. Maybe in a strange, like hair on fire performance, but you can never plan for those things. So I would say, as boring as it sounds, you almost want to play them in the same script that you played Vandy. I know a game that you lost, a game that your quarterback got hurt, but a game that you were in it throughout, a one-score game at the end, and against the top 10 team in Oklahoma with a backup quarterback, that's what you're hoping for, is having a puncher's chance. So I think Mizzou needs to not get cute and definitely ice pack up Ahmad Hardy and say, hey, man, we're going to lean on you. I know they have a couple of like rushing options there, but definitely hit the tight ends, keep in front of the sticks, exactly like you were talking about. Don't get cute. And, this Oklahoma offense has proven, especially against a really prideful Mizzou defense, they will make some mistakes here or there. So I think that if Drink doesn't try to outsmart himself, this could be a very close game to the end. Now, that being said, with that young quarterback against that defense, it's kind of a nightmare situation.
talk about the Oklahoma offense maybe being mistake prone. We're a year removed from this being the game in which Jackson Arnold ultimately showed Oklahoma he's not the quarterback of the future. That was really obvious after watching how badly this game turned out for him when he was just a walking turnover at the end of this game, and it ultimately cost them a chance to be able to win on the road. And they go in this different direction. This is something I haven't probably done a good enough job talking about. And it's something you hit on last pod, but I need to own it kind of when I'm wrong about a take from the preseason. I said countless times this offseason that I wondered how John Mateer's kind of YOLO style would weigh on Brent Venables at times. And if that was going to really kind of push him out of his comfort zone, if it was going to be a source of angst and frustration within this Oklahoma team, I just wondered if a defensive-minded coach like him would be able to roll with some of the mistakes that are kind of bound to come with the style that John Mateer likes to embrace and extending plays, taking shots downfield. I think outside of the Texas game and pieces of that Tennessee game, John Mateer has become exactly the type of quarterback that Venables hoped when he recruited him out of the portal in ways that I don't think you could say he's a game manager. I don't think the box score tells probably a different story and would suggest that he is, but he's just too shifty and too talented to be considered that. Like some of the things that he's doing to get his yards, like when you think of a game manager, you don't think of someone who has the feet of John Mateer. You just don't. That's just not what they're going to try and do. They're going to try and, hey, I'm going to fall forward. I'm going to just, get out of bounds and, extend the football. They're not going to do the things that he's going to be willing to do within a given play. And you also don't think of someone who could take on the front side pressure like he does and then hit a guy downfield to move the sticks, almost like what Lenora Sellers does when he's rolling. Mateer only has 2 turnover-worthy plays under pressure this year. Trinidad Chambliss is the only starting SEC quarterback with fewer.
He's so good, man. He's on all these lists, isn't he?
Yeah, Chambliss really is. I mean, like he's it's going to be a difficult thing to kind of he like this is Ole Miss discussion, not Oklahoma, but like I was thinking about this earlier. Chambliss is the only reason that I haven't compared Ole Miss to 2024 Tennessee. Like Lacey in the Dylan Sampson role, like I think Chambliss is kind of the difference. And what they are. And I guess Oklahoma or Ole Miss rather defensively is different than what Tennessee was, but there are a lot of similarities between those two teams and how they could look getting into the college football playoff. Ole Miss might have the benefit of hosting, but yeah, Chambliss is a difference maker. He has been for sure. And with a lot of these metrics that you look up, you're like, oh,
there he is.
There he is. He's at the top. Wow, that's pretty impressive. But last year on passes 20 yards downfield, John Mateer had 8 turnover-worthy plays. This year, only 3 in those spots. And he's attempting less of those throws, which you kind of assume that would be the case given how they try and win some of these games. But still, he's not flipping the field and doing these things that are just going to cost Oklahoma in the way that Jackson Arnold did last year. Took the bad grounding penalty late against Bama that pushed OU out of field goal range, which is darn near impossible with Tate Sendell. But he's just taking far fewer sacks than he did last year. The Texas game was bad, really bad. 6 turnover-worthy plays, coming off the thumb surgery and all that stuff. How much of it was the thumb? How much of it was just really good Texas defense? I don't know, but he hasn't had more than 2 turnover-worthy plays in any other game this season. Only 3 turnover-worthy plays in the 4 games since Texas. I just think Mateer has done a really nice job of understanding his surroundings and just being the right guy at the right time for this team. And I probably haven't express that enough. And I know we talked about him a ton early on when they get off to the 5-0 start, but I just think that's worth remembering, and it could be the difference in a game like this.
I mean, this is the best way because we kicked it around. It's like, he's not really a game manager because he wins games. They are a points, not a yards offense. That's the best way I could describe it. It's that your defense is built to give you these good field positions, and you need to be the guy who, outside of that grounding penalty, can keep your team in field goal range, get the points out of the drive. And it's not to be an Arkansas offense or an LSU offense that's good 20-20 and shuts down in the red zone and packs it in and says, hey, we're lost here. It's the Mateer is going to put his body on the line to score 7 or to get his team in the field goal range with his legs. And I think with this style of team, limiting the turnovers and playing that style of football, you would take that over a guy with the really gaudy numbers like a Joey Aguilar.
There's a comp to be made that they're almost like what the Eagles have become this year, where they're kind of boring a lot of the time on offense. And then they'll have like 3 plays over the course of the game where like, oh, wow, that's that's exactly what they needed in that spot. But the defense is doing the heavy lifting. The offense, a lot of the time, isn't really setting up the ground game for success. And you're kind of like, what is this team? It's not always the best watch, but you look up and they're winning big time games, and you're kind of in the hunt and doing exactly what you hoped that it would be doing. And that's going to kind of make some people go, you know what? I don't really believe in the upside of this team, because it kind of goes against what conventional logic says you need to be in this day and age. And, you know, to be able to hit on, you know, you need to be able to win a shootout type game. And when they finally got into it, that shootout type game against Ole Miss, they weren't able to win it. So maybe that could end up being their undoing.
That's actually such a good cop. I don't mean to like cut you off, but, you know, take all the tush pushes out and stuff. It's a team that when they win, you go, how do they do this? And when they lose, the national pundits go, this team stinks. And because it looks so ugly, but it's like, that's what football should be. It should be ugly. It should be gritty. I mean, shout out Kirby Smart talking about grit and physicality. That's what this game comes down to a lot, especially at the college level. And Oklahoma's down to just get in the trenches and beat the snot out of you.
And this could be a messy type game. Like I very much think that could be the case. And at this point, though, if you're Oklahoma, you don't really care. Just win these next two games, you're in the college football playoff. It's pretty clear. And I do think they're able to get it done. This would be a really tough ask. Again, I need to bring up this stat one more time, just one more time, because it doesn't really get talked about enough. But Mizzou still has not beat a top 10 team, an AP top 10 team in the regular season during the playoff era. Okay? Beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't had that top 10 win. This is the type of game that Mizzou is close but no cigar. That could be the case again in this one. All right, well, Arkansas, number 17, Texas, 8.5-point favorite. The over-under I have is 2 references to Texas's playoff outlook. Number 17 ranking was tough for the Longhorns. Real tough. Dropping 7 spots. That doesn't happen if it's a one-score game down the stretch. And it was a one-score game going in the fourth quarter, but when it finishes 35-10 like that.
Hold on, pause right here, man. This truck is hitting my yard.
Hitting your yard? Oh, let's keep recording. I need a live. The people need a live reaction of this. Hitting your yard. Okay, Will, give me a play-by-play of what's happening right now.
Okay, so I live by like a concrete factory. It's how, as a millennial, you can afford a house. And 18-wheeler, there's like my street and another version of my street. And sometimes they will get lost like a sheep in my neighborhood and try to, a big, like an 18-wheeler, like not like a semi, like several.
This is, for listeners to this show, like we've gone down this road. I mean, pun intended.
Yes, sorry, but I just watched this. So the old owners of this house had this brilliant idea to put a giant boulder on the corner where my house sits, and I just witnessed an 18-wheeler in real time drag that boulder. I'm gonna have to do something about that later, but boy, howdy, he had some tenacity. He had that Oklahoma grit we were speaking about, because he just kept on going. There's a boulder that I now have to go put back after the podcast. I was scared that he was gonna get stranded there, and I was gonna have to go help. So you saw me like freaking out, looking off screen, but it's an eventful day at the Ogburn household.
So this boulder, is it? I think large rock. When does a large rock become a boulder? Is my question.
When it's used to be a deterrent, right? This is a structural boulder. This is like a SpongeBob riding around the coral flats in a boulder. So this is a boulder that was built to be big. It has a purpose and a job, like a herding dog.
It's the enforcer, essentially.
There you go. It's the goon of the border world. Yes.
Okay. I like that.
So sorry about that. I just thought I was gonna have to hop off. We're good. He somehow survived. He got a gritty win.
Never stop recording when we're about to get a play-by-play of someone crashing into a piece of property at your house. Okay, we were talking about Texas and this ranking, number 17 in the latest playoff rankings, and how basically if they had kept it to one score or lost by 9 or something like that, like I think they're dropping 5 spots instead of 7, and their path to be the first 3-loss at-large team is looking different. Clearly, this is not a scenario in which Texas controls its own destiny. It needs chaos. That probably might not be enough to make the field. And hey, go ask about Ole Miss seemingly having a favorable schedule to reach the playoff and then losing a game at Florida that you probably shouldn't. It stings. It lingers. That's clearly lingering for Texas. We're starting, Will, and I don't know if you've noticed this too, we're starting to see salty Sark. Not, I'm going to beat up a security guard or whatever that person was a couple years ago at the bowl game. Not like that level of Sark, but salty Sark, where he's intimidating at press conferences, man. Like, I told you after the Florida game, I was kind of curious why they went like 9 questions without asking about Arch. And it's because of what Sark has been able to do in these settings where he'll like try a reporter. And it's been sort of brewing for a bit now, salty Sark, which sounds really much like I'm making him a Spice Girl. That's not my intent. But
salty side, I like that. The Spice Boy, you're a little spicy out there, Sark.
God, he's getting spicy, man. He's getting spicy. Awkward moment in the presser this week when asked by longtime Texas columnist Kirk Bohls about the Longhorns underachieving. That was the language that Bohls used. And Sark said, according to who? And Bohls referenced Texas being preseason number 1, which Texas was for the first time in program history, okay? Coming off consecutive playoff semifinals. And Sark turned that into, I guess that's into who voted us number 1. If you watch the full answer, Sark then talks about at Texas, you're held to a championship standard. He likes how his team has battled through, injuries with adversity there, blah, blah, blah. And how if they beat Texas A&M, get this, Will, Texas will become the first team to beat 3 top 10 teams in the regular season since 2019 LSU.
Okay, man.
Which when I heard that, I was like, this cannot be true. This cannot be true that Texas is potentially on the brink. Now, again, we're talking about a hypothetical here. They have not beaten Texas A&M yet, an undefeated Texas A&M team. So we're not adding wins to Texas's total before they happen or anything like that. But I had to look this up because it sort of blew me away. He's right if you exclude conference title games. If you just say the 12-game regular season, technically he is right. Now, other teams have been able to hit that, including the conference title game. Texas is obviously out of the conference title race. Someone fed him that stat and was like, look, maybe his SID is like, we're going to need some stuff because this is coming. When that third loss hits, man, in this era of the college football playoff, as we've seen with Tennessee, as we've seen with a lot of programs, the waters, they get a lot more treacherous. They really do. And salty Sark ahead of this game against Arkansas, which I promise we'll talk about in a minute here, has definitely come out. And look, you probably just want to say the second part of that answer and not have I guess that's into who voted us number 1. Like,
blaming the voters in a subjective sport is very fun. And I don't know, to quote Jules from Pulp Fiction, allow me to retort. Beating a top 10 team in the regular season clearly isn't enough to save your job. Just ask Billy Napier.
Right? It's happened before. It's going to happen again. Go ask Brian Kelly.
Yes, great point. Like, oh my gosh, you beat top 10 teams in the regular season. Hang the banner, dog.
Yeah. Speaking of Brian Kelly, Will, and speaking of those 3 losses, saw this tweet from Matt Fortuna. When Lane went on with McAfee on Tuesday and claimed there was no ultimatum from Keith Carter, no ultimatum to tell Ole Miss whether or not he's staying or going before the Egg Bowl, believe who you want with that. Kiffin also shared that he, Kirby, and Sark are on a group text, and they've come up with an index for how coaches are treated. You ready for this? I don't know if you saw this.
Oh, yeah, I saw this. Trust me, I was locked into a pre-recorded Pat McAfee interview the other day, unfortunately.
Who couldn't be? According to this group text, in which these 3 esteemed head coaches have together, this is how this works now in college football. 1 loss and you're out of the top 10, 2 losses and you're out of the top 25, and 3 losses, you're out of a job. Also of note, Georgia has 1 loss still in the top 10. Ole Miss has 1 loss still in the top 10. Texas has 3 losses still in the top 25. Not sure what metrics they're using. BYU and Georgia Tech are the only 1-loss teams that are out of the top 10. There are no 2-loss power conference teams who are out of the top 25. And Brian Kelly and James Franklin, they both got fired after loss number 3, which is probably the only reason they were fired, right? Like nothing else. No other context we need. It was just simply they didn't win football games, and that's just it. It wasn't
when you lose 3 in like 5 games, it's a little bit different than losing 3 throughout the course of a season, I think.
Like, what are we doing here? What are we just going to pretend that all these losses are just created equally? I was just kind of blown away. Miss me with
But
these
you know what?
guys.
That doesn't shock me at all of that group chat existing. And I feel like Lane is almost learning how to be a paranoid coaching freak from that chat, because I'm sure there are so many conspiracy theories. I'm sure it's like a Manosphere podcast in there when the rankings come out, and it's like, oh, well, they're probably considered this metric you haven't thought of. And like, I'm just imagining, because, they're all part of the Saban tree. Like, what does Sark and Kirby have in common? The group chat's fascinating to me.
Some of these guys, man, just have no self-awareness whatsoever. Like, miss me with coaches on 8-figure contracts with their made-up metrics for why coaches are getting a raw deal. To quote Don Draper, that's what the money's for, okay? What are we doing?
Like, you are the third best school in Texas right now. Like, Texas Tech is better than you. A&M is better than you. And you have likely more money than both of them, which is crazy because they're known for having money. That's kind of the crazy part of it, is that even in Texas, you're the richest team, and that doesn't put you above the money-having Texas teams.
All right, so Sark, I guess you're getting fired, man. Guess you're getting fired. Enjoy your $70 million buyout. It's coming your way. Looking forward to it. Anyway, Arkansas and Texas are playing football on Saturday. As Sark said last year at SEC Media Days, Arkansas fans hate Texas more than they like themselves. I kind of agree.
Hey, this is the rare one where I think Arkansas fans are like, you're good, don't talk about a team. Actually, we'd rather just laugh at Sark. That's just fine.
Yeah. I am going to talk about their team now, Will, because Arkansas is probably still going to lose by one score. I mean, let's just pencil that in. Okay. Let's just do that here. Arkansas is 0-6 in conference play this year. They are only minus 25 in scoring margin in conference play. That is almost impossible.
That's nuts, right? Yeah.
Here's what's so nuts about this. I went back to find every SEC team who went winless in conference play since the league expanded to 14 to find what their scoring margin was in SEC play. 2024 Mississippi State was minus 142. 2023 Vandy was minus 202. 2021 Vandy minus 208. 2020 Vandy minus 203. 2019 Arkansas Chad Morris minus 200. 2018 Arkansas also Chad Morris minus 201. 2017 Tennessee with Butch minus 165. 2014 Vandy minus 181. 2013 Kentucky minus 173. 2013 Arkansas minus 168. 2012 Kentucky minus 202. And 2012 Auburn with my guy, Gene Chizik, minus 191. Just for a little perspective here, in case you didn't pick that up from me reading off all of that, with Mississippi State having the lowest, the best scoring margin among those winless in SEC team play since the conference expanded. Last year, I mentioned how weird it was that Mizzou was, as a 10-win team, minus 29 in conference play. How weird that was. Arkansas could, in theory, lose 2 more nail-biters and finish with a better scoring margin in conference play than a Mizzou team that ended up winning 10 games last year. That's what I'm rooting for. I need that. So you know what? Texas wins this one 31-30. Another one-score loss for Bobby P. Another smashed set of sunglasses. I'm assuming they're still smashed.
Blame the referees. And the cool thing is it doesn't matter. I started to say, go for it on 4th down, but we've seen them kind of miss those too. I.e., it doesn't matter what choices they make. Like, if you take the field goal, you'll probably miss it. If you go for it, you probably won't get it. Yeah. If you get it, you might get a holding penalty. And what's fascinating to me about that list is I often see people say that Vandy is being pushed like an agenda item. There were 3 almost consecutive Vandy teams that were worse in scoring margin than any Chad Morris team. That just goes to show you the job that Clark Lee is doing. I mean, we really can't state it enough. I know people get sick
2 of those were Clark Lee teams, to be fair.
Well, you're right, but you see, he had to install his culture. You see, this is you got to win. You got to build the championship brick by brick. And so anyway, but I'm saying that in terms of, like, Chad Morris was seen as the gold standard of being terrible. North Texas lost and all that. Vandy was in a bad spot pre-Diego Pavia. Let's put it that way.
Really bad spot. Really bad spot. Those numbers, depressing. Very depressing to look at. Minus 25 in scoring margin.
I mean, that's not. I need to actually focus on that. You're so right. That is so nutso. And, I don't think I brought this up last time. I saw a vitriolic fight between South Carolina Twitter and Arkansas Twitter about who's the most in hell. And it was one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. That's why I got that tweet that I pulled up about the Arkansas losses. It is wild how these teams have found a way to lose games with some of the talent they've had, with some of the chances they've had, with some of the plays and playmakers and guys they put in the NFL. And so I hope for better days ahead for Arkansas, a team that has, history, a team that we've seen do great things even over our lifetime, and they just deserve so much better than this.
Yeah, everyone deserves better than this. This is college football hell. We will do a pod in the offseason about the teams in college football hell. I trust me, we'll get there. Maybe that'll be a little bit different to dissect with all these different vacancies, and you kind of get out of hell in some ways when you hire a new coach, and that's kind of the point. Penn State no longer in college football hell. But yeah, Texas, I think, should be able to win this game against an Arkansas team that, even if Texas sleepwalks, you just trust that Arkansas is going to do stupid stuff in the fourth quarter. And it's probably going to be one of those games in which you're like, oh yeah, Texas does have firepower on offense. They are a fun team to watch, but always kind of beware of that team when it hits that third loss. And who knows if that sinks in for Texas.
Yeah, and another, just real quick, like one of these fun rivalries from like kind of conferences past that we have been able to enjoy kind of progressively as Texas has joined the SEC, which is again the vitriol that Arkansas feels for Texas, and we brought this up last year, but the way that Pittman was like the quote that you gave about they hate Texas when they like themselves and all that, and I think that this is a game that was sneaky close last year. Final score notwithstanding, Texas really played tough last year. It was one of those games that it was kind of seen as like the Pittman like will we ever get over the hump, because they were able to stay close with a really good Texas team for a while. And so, yeah, to your point, I think that's what this team has a knack for doing, is just keeping fans on the couch, keeping them watching. And again, at this point, you can at least say, hey, if you're invested, I mean, you're really just a masochist. So enjoy it if you do happen to win. And if not, just have a good time. Like after your game, just flush it, forget it, have fun with the fam. Don't punch any walls or anything. It's not worth it at this point in the season.
Should Arkansas fans start watching games in Spanish?
Now that's a good idea. That's hit that SAP button, get some really colorful commentary to where like maybe you don't know what the penalty is. Maybe you just never know. I think that's a good way to do it. In the same way that I never watched 2020 LSU Alabama, just never hear it, and it never happened.
Just change up the vibe, something that at least it's a kind of a fun call and not a torturous call when you don't understand every single word of what's happening and your eyes can only see it. Just a different form of torture that would be to watch these games in Spanish. When I had my Sling TV day pass, there, for whatever reason, one of the defaults was, and I'm sure like people that are listening to this might have experienced this as well during the YouTube TV dispute. But there would be like the default channel a lot of times when you click on a game would be in Spanish. They're like, why is this the default option to click on the whatever the ESPN game was, and it would go directly to Spanish when I would try and click back to the other game. And it was very frustrating. And so I would always hear like 5 seconds of Spanish before I'd flip back. But maybe I should start listening to games in Spanish. Who knows?
Or of course in Spanish is veraco. Or if you want to go literal to razor back, let's see. That would be Oh, I had a fun one. Oh well, never mind. But yeah, it's not a word in Spanish, razorback. So los veracos is who you'd be watching.
Yeah, whole lot of basura in this game.
Whole lot of basura in Espanol.
Yeah, see. All right, Kentucky, number 14, Vandy. Vandy's a 9.5 point favorite. The over-under I have is 6.7 Vandy points. That's not actually the team total, but it is the average that Kentucky has allowed during this 3-game win streak. Mark Stoops also has a 3-year streak of going on the road and beating a top 15 team. 2022 Florida, 2023 Louisville, 2024 Ole Miss. For whatever reason, each of these last 3 years, he's had that one random how do you like me now game on the road. Just kind of happens. This year would feel a little bit differently if Kentucky were to pull off this upset, just because of how well Cutter Boley's been playing, how much this defense looks like it still gives a crap. Easy to forget because of the Tennessee game that's sprinkled in between these, but 4 of Kentucky's last 5 opponents have been held to 1 offensive touchdown and less than 270 yards of total offense. It's pretty good. That is a Mark Stoops defense. That's what you would hope for. Also what you would hope for, Cutter Boley kind of becoming a guy. Extremely accurate lately, better pocket presence, a lot more decisive. He's running over dudes to be able to get into the end zone. Like the type of thing that you would hope to see from a redshirt freshman who is at the end of his second year, kind of getting shown the ropes at the college level. The type of things that would, in theory, prevent Mark Stoops from going in the portal and giving Zach Calzada 7 figures. One would think, okay? But instead of Kentucky being done with the Stoops era, which it looked like that was very much the case at the midway point of the season. This team now has a real chance to reach the postseason, and that's kind of a wild thought. Like, what if Kentucky just wins 8 games? I had 2 thoughts this week. What if Kentucky wins 8 games? What if LSU wins 9 games? Things that could still happen.
The funniest 8 and 9, and kind of more impressive. We joked about the empty 10 games from Mizzou last year. Both would be more impressive, to be honest.
Probably, yeah, maybe. Especially because it would be winning at Vandy and then winning at Louisville, a Louisville team that was kind of on the outskirts of college football playoff contention, and had that go down the toilet last week. But yeah, I mean, still, that's kind of crazy that it's on the table and that it's not that lopsided, at least with what Kentucky's been lately. This is a scary matchup for Vandy for all of those reasons. Vandy is the team that's fighting for its playoff life. Still only at number 14 in those rankings because their wins haven't really aged well. As easy as it is for us to sit here and go, oh, Vandy's getting disrespected. If Mizzou loses to Oklahoma, Vandy could go into the final weekend of the regular season with 0 wins against current top 25 teams in the playoff poll.
You know what? I'm glad you brought this up because when this first started getting discussed, I wanted to bring this up, but I couldn't really shoehorn it in here. Here's the thing about Vandy. Vandy is functionally broke 4 different teams. And I think that's a pro, not a con. Okay? So they broke Virginia Tech. Right?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
They broke South Carolina. That was when the wheels were really...
They broke Lenore Sellers.
Right, which is South Carolina. Like, without him... Yep.
Who physically was broken because he was concussed in that game on the hit by Langston Patterson, in which South Carolina's offensive line said, "Ole." And okay, fair.
They broke LSU.
They did break LSU. Yeah, they did. LSU cracks in the foundation, and then you just...
As much as A&M fans want to dump dance on LSU's corpse, it was the Vandy loss that got Scott Woodward up out of there, and everyone has said that, right? Similar quarterback situation, unfortunate. They broke Mizzou.
Kind of did. I kind of like where what's the metric the selection committee is looking at for teams broken?
This is analytics right here, brother. You can't quantify this. This is the fact that they went into those matchups with the other team. I mean, again, impossible for us to now look at Virginia Tech, Blacksburg, Inter Sandman. Remember we talked about that in the preamble of like, oh, it's one of the greatest things in college football. It's so scary in that atmosphere because Diego Pavia just beat them to a pulp. And so many teams have gotten so physically dominated by Vandy that they've just quit for the rest of their season.
Did the Auburn defense get broken by Vandy?
Maybe so, man. And so you can't hold that against Vandy, that they have just, again, bludgeoned teams to death and made them question at their very soul who they were. And those self-doubts cropped up later in future games. I think that's important. I think that's awesome for them. And again, these are the Vanderbilt Commodores. This is not Alabama. This is not Georgia. This is not even Mizzou. So I think there's something to be said about losing to Vandy shook these teams so bad they never recovered.
Objection sustained. I think that's a fair point. I think it's a really fair point. Probably not going to help them with the selection committee, but you are right in that, you've got 3 fired coaches in those wins. And you have South Carolina, who South Carolina fans want Shane Beamer fired. At least a lot of them do. They have broken a lot of teams. Now, they didn't break Texas. Kind of kept Texas's playoff hopes alive. Obviously didn't break Bama. Maybe kind of got Bama to a place where they were a little bit more mentally tough. Had already had the Georgia win, so can't say that it turned Bama around necessarily. But there's something to be said for that, Will. There's something to be said for that. Can they break Kentucky?
That's the thing. Kentucky has the most momentum, of a team they played in the minute, because we talked about Texas being a little bit lazy or whatever, and they came back against them. So, yeah, I think Kentucky is kind of a hard out right now. And we'll go with that really quickly as people talk about the Hall of Fame. It's like, did this player change? Can you tell the story of this sport without this player? I think for the story of this college football season, which was a season of chaos, fired coaches, all that, Vandy has been right there. And again, it's easy to look at Kentucky as simply a 5-5 team, but I think we're completely aligned on Cutter Boley. I think they've found something for the future there. I think it would be fascinating if they beat this Vandy team and Mark Stoops is like, how do you like me now? I'm not going anywhere. I'm not bleeping leaving. And then Kentucky's like, I guess. And then they just run it back next year because their offense has been the problem. And again, we could talk about the 42 passing yards at half against Auburn, whatever. But it looks like they have finally solved some of the offensive stuff at least. So I think it's a big testing case for that.
A lot of significant implications for this one. Talking about Mark Stoops' future, which I've tried to basically say he's done if he loses this game a million times, so I won't necessarily say that for this one, but
That'd be a fifth team that they could get their coach up out of there. It wouldn't be a firing. It'd probably be like a little forced retirement, but we're going to count it.
he's not getting forced out of retirement. I've given up on that. When you're due $37 million in 60 days, you're not going to retire. Like, sorry. We'll get to James Franklin a little bit later in Lad of the Week, spoiler alert, but that's just not going to be the case with this buyout and the way that this has played out. So what's going to be the difference in a game like this is what I keep coming back to, because it could be one of those back and forth, one possession throughout type games, and you're looking for something to prevail down the stretch. I think there are a lot of teams that would be in Vandy's spot who would crumble, and they would probably succumb to this pressure, and they would feel the weight of those expectations that they have not had before against an emerging Kentucky team, and go, man, we're just not built for this. Diego Pavia is built for this. I think he is built for this. I think this passing attack can do the heavy lifting. And I think that teams who can stretch the field can take advantage against Kentucky. I think the Tennessee game being kind of that outlier in that stretch is not necessarily a coincidence. And they performed extremely well against Auburn, who has obviously struggled to stretch the field. That's been an issue for them. And they've had these performances where you've kind of looked up and go, oh, wow, like that's actually really impressive that they were able to, do this against Florida and turn TJ Lagway into a pumpkin and, decimated group of receivers for that one. And they obviously weren't able to stretch the field there. But I think Vandy can still stretch the field, and maybe not necessarily with like 30-yard shots and stuff like that. But I think Eli Stowers is going to be crucial in this one. Kentucky has not seen a player quite like him during this defensive resurgence that they've had the last month. Side note, by the way, Stowers, Michael Trigg, the former Ole Miss tight end who has since been tearing it up at Baylor, they're in the midst of a really fun race to the Mackey Award, which we're going to talk about with Shehan, with the situation with Michael Trigg and the bizarre Baylor athletic director, Mac Rhodes, who was the college football playoff selection committee chair, and all of that drama of that situation, that very strange altercation that led to him stepping down. I'm not sure how that's going to impact Michael Trigg and his pursuit of the Mackey Award, if that gets in the way of Stowers or whatever. But Stowers is first among all power conference players in third down conversions on passes. He's got 12 of them this year. Feels like more. It really does. Like every single time they need a big time third down. I talked about this last year and how Stowers had more production on third down even than like Brock Bowers, which is just an insane thing for a tight end to be able to do. And I think we're going to see a lot of that in this game. That's going to be huge in a game like this where Kentucky's going to try and dial up pressure, try and speed up that clock for Diego Pavia. They want to be able to contain his legs and not making him improvise outside of the pocket. And that's where obviously he's been really deadly. I think Vandy wins, but fails to cover in a game that Kentucky kind of leads throughout. Overtime in this one. Doors survive 27-24, sets up the massive showdown in Knoxville next week.
Yeah, and I love the highlight of Stowers there. I mean, I would say that in a year where the theme has been, okay, pretty much every player that we thought in the preseason was going to be awesome has at least taken a step back. Talking about all of the quarterbacks, Ryan Williams, as far as being a cover athlete, stuff like that, everybody's taking a step back.
I thought about this too, Will.
Diego Pavia, right there. I mean, he's right. Again, we talked about he was a returning all-SEC player who didn't get any preseason love. And I think he's going to have an opportunity to be right there. And it's going to be the same story again, which is sad, which is like, oh, well, you played great, but there's some other buzzier guys. And then Stowers, to your point, kind of quietly, has played exactly like they hoped he would. And knowing that that's the guy on every third down, knowing that he's going to have the lumber laid on him. And I can't believe he survived some of those hits against Auburn last week where it was just old school, smash mouth, like we're going to make this guy drop the ball no matter what.
He's so tough, man.
He's so tough. Like it's just, again, the physicality that Vandy has shown. And so what I started to say is like, well, how do they, generate these long plays at Vandy? Well, it's Stowers and it's carries, funny enough. It's either scrambles from Pavia or it's Ed Alexander taking it off down the middle or making a couple guys miss, whatever that would be, kind of the swing passes as well. And so Vandy gets it, but they get it in kind of an interesting way, which is that you're not really sure which way the offense is going to go. And then someone's just wide open. You're like, oh, there he is. And so this is going to be, I love the score prediction 27-24 here. Wouldn't shock me if this got into the 30s because these are two teams that have been known as ball controlled defensive teams. But if you kind of look at how they played lately, that's not exactly been the case. The Vandy defense we've seen has taken a little bit of a step back. The Kentucky offense has taken a little bit of a step up while their defense has taken a step up as well. And so that being said, I think this really does come down to Clark Lee versus Mark Stoops in a physicality off. I'm actually really excited about this game. This is going to be awesome.
Kind of quietly like one of the better games of a very light slate this weekend. And I realize the USC and Oregon game is the one that everybody's going to be locked into, so I understand that context. But it's
so that we can watch USC OU. That's why we're going to be locked in.
Wait, say it again.
Well, that's why we'd be watching USC Oregon, so that we can get USC OU in the playoffs.
Oh, so that we can get USC. Yes,
that's
correct.
We'll be hater watching that. Yes, exactly. And so, no, I'm actually, like, again, to your point, this has implication for Mark Stoops' future, for Kentucky's bowl future, and the future of this team. You know, do they try to look at retaining their OC after kind of a disastrous start to the year? What happens with Mark Stoops? And then Vandy is very much still in the discussion for the playoffs. So, yeah, I think this is like low key a pretty huge game for both sides.
Yeah, low key. Biggest implications of any game this weekend. I realize Mizzou and Oklahoma is the top 25 matchup, and Oklahoma is trying to preserve playoff chances. But Mizzou, there's not really as much at stake. Where for Kentucky, there are a lot of other things. Even though Mizzou has been the better team, I'm just saying, like, in terms of what the future holds, all that stuff. Yeah, fair point. All right, number 20 Tennessee, 3.5-point favorites against Florida. Will's laughing because you know what I'm going to say right now.
Oh, I'm laughing because this game is this far down the slate. These are two big brands. It's kind of crazy to see them come after Kentucky Vandy.
No, I always just go in order. You don't realize that I do that? I go in order.
I don't realize most things, Connor. Come on now.
I start at the new games. I just go work my way through chronologically. Yeah. The over-under I have is 2.5 references to 2003. Fun year. That is the last time that Tennessee won in the Swamp. George W. Bush administration, first term. 10 in a row. 10 in a row for Florida against Tennessee in Gainesville, dating back to that game, 2003, September 20, 2003. I was in 8th grade. You were in 3rd grade?
Yes, great call. My grades go with the year. It's the favorite thing about my class.
Oh, nice.
03, 3rd grade, 04, 4th grade.
That makes sense. Number 1 song in America, September 20th, 2003, was Shake Your Tail Feather.
Oh, Murphy Lee, Nelly.
Oh,
that was, song, the FSU song. That's a good throwback, man.
Saint Lunatics. I used to know every word to this song. Every single word.
This is the early 2000s hip-hop trivia you got. Murphy Lee. Okay.
Yeah. Can't say I know every word to it anymore. Hasn't been on rotation lately for obvious reasons.
Can we get a Shake Your Tail Feather verse here if Tennessee pulls this one out?
Tell you what, Will. Tennessee is starving like Marvin to end this streak.
Got 16 balls of fire.
We're stopping there. We're stopping there. I did Google lyrics earlier today just to remind myself of how great this song is. Again, we're separating the art from the artist.
Of course.
As always, we are disavowed.
Mm-hmm.
It begs the question, though, this matchup. If not now, then when for Tennessee in the Swamp? This is the first time that since these teams have started meeting regularly back in 1990, year one of the Spurrier era, that Florida will have an interim coach. Usually this game is 3rd Saturday in September. Now it is the 4th Saturday in November. Tennessee fans love when this game is late because it's always like, oh man, Florida gets such an advantage because it's hot early in the season. Vols, they embrace the chill. They're one of the northern SEC teams. Bad news for Tennessee. 82 and sunny in Gatesville on Saturday. A little bit warm.
Not to get political here, Connor, but I love how climate change has affected the SEC slate because some games are just in snow now, and some games it's 85. It's awesome.
We had a snow game last year with Arkansas and Mizzou. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a snow game, but we're going to have to. You know what? The chance for it was last week, though. I think we kind of missed our one weekend for it. It was setting up like we had a snow. There was snow in Kentucky last week. Tennessee had snow. So I think we might have missed our opportunity for a snow game, but never say never. I did look at the 10-day for Thanksgiving. It was like,
and we're still not. I mean, we could technically have a snow playoff game on a campus, which would be pretty fire. Even as a Southern guy, I think that a snow playoff game at a campus would be fire.
I think it would be too. Yeah, SEC is that football weather. SEC fans would disagree with that. Yeah, gosh, it's going to be high 75 on Thanksgiving. Kind of wish it would be cooler. Anyway, we're talking about this streak and all the weird things that have come of it during these 22 years, whatever this is now, Will, this is such a hard thing to understand unless you've seen this play out. And we talk about like who's in college football hell, and Tennessee fans going to the Swamp this is college football hell. Okay. There are 8 wins by multiple scores that Florida's had during this 10-game win streak in the Swamp against Tennessee. The 2 Florida wins that weren't by multiple scores were both 63-yard McElwain specials. Oddly specific. 2015 game, 4th and 14. You had the Antonio Callaway 63-yard catch and run with a minute and a half left. Florida wins that game by 1. Kind of, the cardiac team that just was able to just have something special about it early in that season. They were looking like they were going to be maybe like 2013 Auburn all over again. That didn't prove to be the case because obviously we had the post Will Greer suspension version of Florida that we saw play out. But anyway, 2017 game, Felipe Frank's Hail Mary, 63 yards. Tyree Cleveland would have went to overtime, so a little bit different there, but still, you get what I'm saying.
I love that you said 63-yard McElwain specials, and I just knew exactly what you were talking about. Wow, what a moment in history.
I remember watching both of these plays live and thinking Tennessee is just never going to win in this building, ever. I mean, they have, but it's going to take a miracle, it feels like, for Tennessee to be able to win in the Swamp. And maybe the miracle is having an interim coach. Maybe that could be exactly it. But as great as Josh Heupel has been for overcoming a lot of these streaks at Tennessee, one of the things that if you're in the anti-Heupel crowd, you can say, well, he's 0 in true road games against those big 3 rivals.
If you're in the anti-Heupel crowd, you sound like a hater at this point with Tennessee, with as tough as they had it, to your point, 0-3, and Heupel's coming in here. You're going to appreciate Josh Heupel if you're a Tennessee fan.
If he loses this one, that crowd will grow.
That's why I'm pre-setting people up, because just in case, just remember, who did we talk about, 2017 Butch Jones earlier? Just remember that's the mess he walked into, okay?
He walked into Pruitt's mess. Let's not.
Which was worse.
It was worse. Yes. Butch at least kind of knew what he was doing. Pruitt. Anyway, Florida is such an impossible team to predict week to week. Really impossible. They played like a team that still looked like it cared on Saturday at Ole Miss. And that was a week removed from the Kentucky game where they looked like they wanted to be anywhere else but a football field in Lexington. In the Swamp this year, we saw them beat Texas. Their previous game in the Swamp, they lost to USF. So what's the constant in all of this? The constant is that Tennessee goes into the Swamp, craps down its leg like it has 15 times in the 17 times that these teams have played in the Swamp since they've been playing regularly dating back to 1990. Joey Aguilar might need some Imodium in this one. Might need some Imodium because that could very easily happen to him. You could close your eyes and picture a scenario in which he's throwing interceptions left and right, and Tennessee all of a sudden is staring up at a deficit at Florida and wondering, how is this happening? We're the better team. I think Florida plays with a tear on fire, even with decimated receivers. Florida wins 31-21, and Tennessee fans are beside themselves with Josh Heupel.
And, they shouldn't be, but I get it. I really do. And that being said, talking about the constant, I'm going to zoom back out on something from the Florida Ole Miss game. Now, I'm not going to say, gotcha, I disagree with you, you're wrong or whatever, but I just want to talk about framing, all right? So in that game, Trinidad Chambliss, I think I went back and watched highlights. Granted, I was at the Georgia game. I'm not going to tell you I was real time locked into this game. But kind of the takeaway from that game was, Trinidad Chambliss struggled. He had the key turnover. DJ Lagway kind of a vintage game to keep it close. I would argue these are pretty much average performances by these two quarterbacks, and I think we've come to expect Trinidad. Now, granted, not a great rushing performance by Trinidad Chambliss, but it's almost like we've grown to expect this level of greatness, honestly, from Trinidad Chambliss, and it goes expected. Whereas I feel like Lagway plays about the same, but it just depends on if guys catch balls, and it really, he is actually kind of the constant factor in that every good DJ Lagway game looks like lower completion percentage, hit on the deep throws. Every bad DJ Lagway game looks like
4
lower
interceptions,
completion percentage,
5 interceptions,
miss the big throws. Someone else catches the big throws. And so then the question becomes, when we look at Florida, Does this defense have the ability to catch those big throws? And I'm here to tell you right now with Tennessee, I don't think they do. I'm here to tell you right now with Tennessee, a quarterback like DJ Lagway, especially with interim head coach, date Mike Energy, sending that thing, like he did or like he has against Ole Miss. I don't think that this defense is showing they have the physicality of even a Kentucky, right? Where Kentucky said, we're going to hit you. We're going to make it unfun. We're going to get up under this. And by the end of this game, it's going to look like one of these receivers down there somewhere. Whereas I feel like if DJ Lagway is able to just load up and throw the ball, it's going to go very different from when Joe Milton tried this. And so point being, yeah, I think that Florida needs to not overthink this and stick to their game plan, not get caught up in, last week before, lane buzz, all that. And that's why having Billy Gonzalez as an interim, I think is so great because he's a guy who's been with the program a long time and knows how special this rivalry is to the fans and knows how big of a deal it is to lose this game, even with an interim coach. I think that these fans would be much more willing to excuse a loss to Kentucky, a blowout loss to Kentucky, than to have this streak, broken against or muddied against Tennessee.
It's kind of worst case scenario for Josh Heupel with this matchup. You were hoping that when this came around, your team would still have playoff life. And yeah, maybe you could say, well, it'd be that much more devastating to lose this game to Florida if it, wiped your playoff opportunity off the table. And, you felt like, man, we're all of a sudden now in an even worse spot. But I just think it's going to be really difficult to pretend that history doesn't matter. And you could say, yeah, well, a lot of these guys don't care about the history. The vast majority of this roster wasn't even born yet the last time that Tennessee won in the Swamp. But you hear about this stuff all week. It is an atmosphere that's going to be charged, where there are a lot of atmospheres that if they have an interim coach and the season is lost, they're not going to have a charged atmosphere, but they will because it's Tennessee. And I just think that in that building, there are just things that happen to this program for whatever reason. And until Josh Heupel shows you that he's the guy that can kind of get over that hump in the same way that Phil Fulmer had to against Spurrier, it's just tough to bank on it. And I really don't like to be default to history guy, because something that happened in 2007 doesn't dictate what happens in 2025. Like I really do try and stay away from that. But I just think that given the weaknesses that Tennessee has shown, and given the points that you just mentioned with Lagway of like when he looks good, I think that could play into this one. And all of a sudden Tennessee is just like, oh boy, what is this year? What has this year become? And how much of a missed opportunity is this to now be 0-3 against your rivals this year? That's what they'd be looking at. That'd be a tough pill to swallow.
Maybe I can be. It's funny because probably when I started this podcast, I was a little bit too much of a hater and a little bit too negative. And maybe I've come full circle to where I could be accused of being a little bit too positive. But I would say Tennessee is one of the few exceptions. Like there have been several teams where I've said, hey, at this point in the season, you've done enough for me to feel like you had a good season. Tennessee, when they had the number one offense in the SEC and they were humming and it was like, oh, you guys have done all this great stuff. Look at UCLA. Look at, Nico. You've done this with Aguilar. You should be so proud to have your head coach. I actually think this is one of the rare cases where if you lose this game in Florida, your season can be disappointing because of how it started. I think you don't look at the preseason expectations and you look at where you were a couple of weeks into the season or, even a couple of months into the season where you go, we know our offense is great. We're hitting, these big Chris Brazzell throws. We're able to block it up. We're able to run the ball a little bit. Yeah, our defense struggles, but we're good enough on offense and we found our quarterback, and most teams wish they could say that. So yeah, I do think this could be despite the history, a real disappointing game for Tennessee, who is playing for pride at this point, right? Because they're out of contention. Still going to kind of have a bowl game, but, what does that mean in this age?
Funny thing that can also still happen, Tennessee wins 10 games this year. So weird. It's so weird, man. It's very difficult to figure it out with some of these teams, especially as they're sitting here. Tennessee's sitting there with 7 wins. But, hey, if they win these 3 matchups, which they could be favored final 2 regular season games, and then get a favorable, like a Citrus Bowl or something like that, 10-win season still could be on the table.
And again, it's going to sound like, oh, I'm Mr. Like, oh, you host a podcast. Of course, you want everybody to tune in. Like, me, dude. I've said, again, maybe sometimes in my detriment, like, I just didn't care about Auburn with Peyton Thorne. And I was like, they're just not going to win anything. So I'm going to watch them, but I'm not really going to care because nothing they're going to do is going to change that. There are a couple of games in here where it's like, even an SC outsider, like, I'm fired up for this game. And I feel like you guys should be too, like, as listeners, because there's going to be real emotions and real stakes in this game in terms of a rivalry. And this is the stuff that college football used to be about, that we'd say we never want to lose this, so you better get up for this game if you don't want to lose this.
Yeah. College football purists got to appreciate the third Saturday in September, or even when it's the 4th Saturday in November. Have to. It's just the rules. All right, lock of the week. Water has found its level, Will. Back to 5-7 after an easy Washington cover against Purdue. You should not be fading at this point. I'm telling you right now. This is going to be painful, but I have to do it. Pitt is plus 2.5 at Georgia Tech.
You're such a sicko, dude.
I know.
Narduzzi versus Haynes King.
Narduzzi cares about the ACC. He doesn't care about Notre Dame. He cares about the ACC, Will.
He's on record of saying this. You're right. This is a big game.
All he cares about is ruining the ACC's last-ditch effort at a 2-bid league, and he's going to find a way to do it. He just will. If they beat Georgia Tech in this one, that's like curtains on the ACC getting 2 teams in. This is when Pitt bounces back, and finally Haynes King kind of runs out of gas late for a Georgia Tech team that has not really been playing particularly well in November. They have not passed the eye test. They've really struggled with Boston College. It's been kind of a team that you're like, you were winning all these games early on. It was and these Haynes King comebacks are tremendous, and they always are on the multi-view when they're happening. And I'm like, babe, Haynes King's down 14.
What's he thinking about? Haynes King, not a comeback here. I don't know. He's never out. He might be down. He's never out.
I think Georgia Tech is actually the team that's leading in this one, though. And that's the problem. And then Pitt finds a way to come back late, be able to overcome that loss to Notre Dame, which was not a devastating loss at all. Like, not ACC play. Who cares? Like what's the big deal of having College Game Day in the house and getting boat raced? Like, who? It's not a big deal. I don't care about that type of stuff. So Pitt, who has found a way to kind of still be an all right team, even with a weird season of injuries, Desmond Reed, quarterback change, all those different things. Pitt finds a way, and that weird, strange plus 2.5 line works in favor of the fight in Narduzzi's.
I feel like we should get a Narduzzi Haynes King arm wrestle to determine possession here. I think Pitt is just having an all-time weird season. But it could be their season. We'll see.
And here's the other part that's kind of factoring into this. I just have a strange sense that Georgia Tech and Georgia will not be playing as one-loss teams next week. I don't know why. I still have that thought in the back of my mind that they won't both be one-loss teams. It's just something I can't quite picture. Also, like, I can't quite picture them playing in Mercedes-Benz. That's going to be so strange to see that. But anyway, nonetheless, I hope I'm wrong, because Haynes King rules, and rooting against Haynes King is not going to be something I'm actively going to do. Just not. All right, let's kick it to Shehan Jeyarajah. Great stuff with him talking about this coaching carousel, the playoff, Texas Tech, and more. So here is Shehan. For those of you who are not watching Saturday Down South podcast on YouTube and just are audio only, now would be a good time to go on YouTube and subscribe to Saturday Down South, because we have all of our episodes are uploaded in full. If you like watching our individual game breakdowns, you're like, hey, you know what? 2-hour pod, that's really not for me. I really just kind of want to hear about my own team. That's fine. Saturday Down South on YouTube. We're going to have all of those matchup breakdowns. We do every single power conference game. We preview, we recap that involve the SEC. So we have so much content right now on Saturday Down South on YouTube. We have YouTube exclusive videos, and sometimes we'll do interviews that are just on Saturday Down South on YouTube. So definitely go subscribe. Please do that right now. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is CBS Sports' Shehan Jeyarajah. Shehan, got a lot I want to get to with you, but let's start with this. Do you have any sense whatsoever what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee cares about anymore? Because I think I've officially given up trying to get inside their mind after the way that Tuesday night's ranking played out.
Well, there's a couple pieces of this, right? One is, it's important to keep in mind, this is a room of 12 disparate people with their own criteria, and then one guy has to go out and explain what all of the rest of them are thinking. Whether or not he agrees with it is the other piece of this to keep in mind. But I think that I'll say this. I think the committee is really sort of valuing the like advanced stats of it all, like sort of the like power ratings of it all. And so when you see a team like Notre Dame that just, it seems a little crazy that despite not having a very good resume, they're up at number 9 and separated by 4 spots from a Miami team that beat them. When you look at, even if you want to say Utah, for example, being kind of like treated in a different way than you've seen maybe some Big 12 teams in the past, like, it's because the numbers love them. Now we can get into the conversation of, well, the numbers love, Texas Tech, and they're not being treated. Again, there's obviously limits to this stuff, but I think that, like, this is the season probably where it feels like the committee has taken resume least into account than it has in previous years. Which, again, I mean, it's complicated to try to rank teams. Like, we've been part of this. We've been part of discussions where we're all trying to put together rankings. Like, I'm sympathetic to that. But, like, it is obviously always a little jarring when you go in and you're like, this very explicitly breaks your own precedent that you just set 3 spots earlier.
Counterpoint. If they're doing that, let's go back to the computers. Because if they're just going to rely on all these metrics and then not talk about it, one, we either need to be transparent about it, or 2, let's just go back to the computers. Because if that's what we're going to default to anyways, and it's going to be metrics that they're not willing to discuss, and instead they're talking about rushing yards in a given game, what are we doing?
Well, and again, like, it really is the case, right? That, like, in many cases, they just look at teams and they're like, we think this team's better. We just do, it's just reality. We, something that I said on other interviews, like, it's very clear to me that the committee thinks that Utah's better than BYU, right? Like, those are 2 teams that are right next to each other, but clearly the committee thinks that Utah's better. But, like, you can't realistically put a Utah team that not only has a head-to-head loss, but also has an additional loss ahead of BYU. And like, again, not nominally, their loss to Texas Tech was even worse than what BYU's was, right? But so they try to, like, be like, oh, well, let's put them over to the side over here because we don't really think that BYU's all that good, and we don't have a whole lot of justification for it. And again, that's so much of the time what happens. That's, when people kind of say the committee does what it wants and creates justification later, like, that is a big part of it, is that there are many cases where they're just like, well, we saw the film and we felt like this team was better. Or we saw the team and we felt like this team was worse. And we're going to make up a reason why we feel like that's the case. And that's sort of the complication in general whenever you're kind of getting somebody to explain it, because a lot of the time there just isn't a good explanation.
You talk about having one person have to go out there and just explain all of these things to everybody. The development that's just wild. And I don't know if enough people, myself included, I don't know if we're talking enough about what happened with Mack Rhoades. And I'm sure very near and dear to your heart, but the Baylor AD, the CFP chairman who resigned from his role after this bizarre sideline incident, apparently with Michael Trigg, over the color of his undershirt. Like, could you explain what went on with all of this and how wild this is to happen right now?
So that's only half of the story, actually. So what happened was, initially this season, before their game against Arizona State, I believe that was September 28th. Like you said, Mack Rhoades, the Baylor athletic director, had an altercation with a player where he basically kind of seems like got a little physical with him over, like you said, the undershirt thing. Then he got a little physical with that guy's position coach as well, because the position coach came to defend him, which, credit the position coach for doing that. He was investigated. He kind of apologized. That was settled, let's say, right? But it sets sort of this weird precedent of like, oh, what's going on there? But actually, there's kind of been a second development in this. And so this past week, he took a personal leave of absence from the university, and he is facing a second investigation. Now, this is not, according to the athletic department, related to anything that happened inside the athletic department. Sort of what I've been told is that it was more of a personal situation, let's say, but one that potentially throws his job status into question. I will say right now, this isn't explicit reporting, but this is informed speculation. I do not think he will be back as the athletic director at Baylor. And so, like, that puts everybody in a weird position right now, because like you said, he was the chair of the College Football Playoff Committee, a very high profile role, probably the highest profile role that you can have as an athletic director, especially. Then, so he leaves that role 1 week after he's on, 1 day actually after he's on TV talking about this. Then apparently this leave of absence is meant to be approximately 28 days. But again, it might just be HR process. It might be separation agreement. We don't necessarily know. But I mean, and you didn't ask about it necessarily, but it makes things really complicated when you're trying to make your decision on your football coach whose season ends on November 29th when you don't even know who your athletic director is going to be in a week. So it's all a mess down there, and it's happening at about the worst possible time.
Do you think Dave Aranda joins this coaching carousel, or rather Baylor joins this coaching carousel, even with all this instability? Because we've seen at LSU, you can have instability galore and still find a way to fire a football coach.
Well, I'll say this. I think that people in the athletic department and decision-making capacities would literally like any possible excuse to not have to make a move this year because of all the complication in the athletic department. You mentioned, of course, the LSUs and the SEC in general, right? Like the SEC just does what it wants. Like they don't care. Like there's no rules, there's no guidelines. You just figure it out. And if you do anything that people don't like, the governor will back you up, right? Well, it's not the case like that, especially at a private school like Baylor. They are very sort of best practices process oriented. They don't want to step out of line in ways that, by the way, has hurt them in the past, to be quite honest. Especially when it came to the implementation of the NIL era. So I think that, again, the people in the athletic department want there to be literally any excuse to keep him around. If he could win his next 2 games and go 7-5 and make a bowl game, like they would be breathing a sigh of relief. I don't think that's going to happen. They go on the road to play Arizona this week. They play Houston in their last game. Arizona 7-3. Houston, of course, is ranked in 8-2. And also, by the way, in year 2 of a rebuild, whereas Baylor's in year 6. If they lose both those games, they miss a bowl game. And if he misses a bowl, you cannot bring it back. Just flat out, straight up, you cannot bring him back. This was a culmination season for Baylor. And to come out of it with a 5-7 record and then graduate all your best players, I just don't think that that's a palatable situation. So, if you were to ask me, I think that they're going to be forced to get rid of him in a lot of ways, but they are looking for any possible way to sell keeping him.
Get Colin Klein. Get Colin Klein if that happens, man.
Colin Klein. My other guy who I've been bringing up a lot is Will Stein at Oregon. Yep. You bring in sort of the Oregon infrastructure and administration. He was a high school coach down in Texas at UTSA as well. Like he brings so much of modern football to the table, and I think he would be a really good vocal leader. But like you said, Colin Klein, Eric Morris, like there are really good coaches that I think Baylor could go after if they're smart about this. But again, like we don't even know who's going to be making that decision at this point.
You probably just answered this question, but who do we need to be talking about more in this coaching cycle? Because we're seeing a lot of the same names that are resurfacing, especially for these SEC jobs. It's a little bit of a different candidate list within the Big 12, but who's the guy that we need to be talking about more? Eric Morris is probably being one of them, with one of the more impressive out of nowhere seasons with what he's doing at North Texas. But like, who's the guy that you just think is going to end up getting one of these jobs, and we're probably not discussing them enough right now?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because just mathematically, like obviously, there are too many jobs open for the number of candidates that have been brought to the table. And, maybe Lane Kiffin can take 3 jobs at the same time. I don't know, but
he can do it.
But yeah, he can probably do it. But, I think that everybody right now is so obsessed with sort of that top name candidate, but there's going to be some really, really interesting candidates, I think, down the board. Of course, I mentioned Eric Morris. I mentioned Will Stein. Obviously, I think that especially maybe more in Big Ten country with a Penn State or something like that, Matt Campbell is a name that, has kind of ebbs and flows. And I know that people don't always get why Matt Campbell keeps getting brought up, but to answer that question, I would ask you to go look at Iowa State's sports reference page and look at the history of Iowa State football and try to pinpoint exactly the moment that Matt Campbell got there. He is an astonishing program builder that I think could do a lot with a lot. But, I think that, again, like I'm really interested by some of these coordinators. I mentioned Will Stein. I think that he is somebody who could get a job. I honestly think that there are 3 coaches on Oregon's staff who potentially could get head coaching jobs in Will Stein, defensive coordinator Tosh Lapoy, and also their recruiting coordinator and assistant head coach Rashad Samples, maybe for maybe a group of 5 opportunity as well. I think that they have a tremendous staff over there. So we're focusing so much obviously on trying to poach sitting head coaches, but I actually think that some of the biggest wins of this cycle are going to be programs that take chances on really good coordinators.
We should probably be talking about Danton Lynn more too. I'm kind of realizing as you're bringing up these names, you're talking about coordinators, like especially if USC goes on the road and beats Oregon, that's all of a sudden changing the conversation, changing the market for him. And he was one that is kind of fast tracked and been, hey, what do you mean Lincoln Riley actually has a defense that can hold up? What do you mean they can actually hang in the trenches? And this is a guy who I think would be making a lot of sense at a place like Michigan State. What do you think is the next one of these jobs that comes open, power conference levels? Is it Michigan State? Is it Florida State? Is it, I mean, we already talked about Baylor, so we don't need to mention them again, but like, what's the next one that we're going to be, making all of our candidate lists for?
Yeah, it's a good question, because there are so many that are, let's say, on the 50-50 list, right? Because, I mean, for example, if you're Michigan State's, like, firing Jonathan Smith would be a huge swing, a lot of money. Can you, let's say, rehome him at UCLA or at Oregon State? He is from Pasadena, by the way, and obviously played at Oregon State as well. So, I mean, I think that that's sort of also part of the question. I mean, I think that honestly, too, we mentioned Baylor, of course. Like, I think that they would love the opportunity to sort of, let's call it Scott Satterfield him, right? Find him another job that maybe makes some sense. You could also call it a Shaka Smart or whatever you want to call it. But like, I think that would be something that I'd keep an eye on. There's a lot of, let's say, 50-50 jobs, right? Because I mean, I don't think that you can realistically spend the amount of money it's going to take to fire Mike Norvell. Like, I just think that that's a lot for Florida State to take on, but also, like, they're looking around at Florida. They're looking around at some of these other programs. Like, well, can we afford to be perceived as falling behind them? I don't necessarily know that either. I think that Mark Stoops was an interesting one. I think he started to trend in the right direction. Cutter Boley's a dude, by the way, at quarterback. I think that he is a lot of fun to watch. So it's a weird market for that reason, because there's a lot of schools that could get in the mix, but also, especially in a year like this, where there isn't an obvious guy to go and take instead, I don't know that those jobs happen. One more I'll mention as well, that I think might come open is Colorado. That would be a retirement situation with some of the health issues around Deion Sanders, but also Deion Sanders is both his own guy, and so he'll do whatever he wants, and also is a very stubborn guy, and I don't know that he wants to go out like this either. So that's an interesting one, though, to watch. If I had to guess, I think that that they probably kind of mutually separate at some point.
Yeah, because he won't be forced out. There's too much alignment there.
Well, also they can't afford to. Just also is the other piece of this.
Yeah.
But also, like, they probably can't. And I mean, think about what it would look like and how Colorado would suffer reputationally if they kick out Deion Sanders. Like, they would become like a villain to a lot of people in a way that I don't know that they can recover from. So finding a mutual situation is probably the best way out of this.
I want to talk Texas Tech with you, of course. You wrote what I believe is the seminal piece of what Texas Tech is doing, why it's such a unique inflection point in college football for them to kind of seize this window that they felt like they had, especially with the Cody Campbell dollars, all these different things that served as this preamble for this season that they're having to now be in the top 5 of the college football playoff rankings. And seemingly with everything in front of them, it's one thing to kind of have this plan. It's another to see it in motion. And right now we're seeing it executed in such a unique, special way. Why has this worked so well from top to bottom?
I'm glad you asked that. And this is something I really want to emphasize, is that everybody can talk about the idea of going out and throwing a bunch of money around, but Texas Tech is not the only program that did that this offseason. And it isn't even the most expensive roster in college football this year. There are more expensive rosters, maybe even one down there, a rival in Austin. So I think, though, that a big part of Texas Tech's deal was that, so back in July of 2024, they got together, led by Cody Campbell, but their entire athletic administration, and they basically came to the table and said, we want to be prepared for the transfer portal window in 2024 so that we can go all in on this 2025 season when the rules might be changing, when they knew that House versus NCAA might be on the horizon. And so they had planned for essentially 6 months of how to handle this moment. They identified hundreds of players who potentially could enter the transfer portal, and they identified their roster and where the biggest needs were. Of course, they prioritized in the trenches. They added 3 potential starters on the offensive line. They added one of the best defensive line classes in the history of college football. You could make a pretty good case. And like, again, when you look at this working where it did in other places, I think the narrative in so many ways was kind of, they're trying to 2024 Florida State it, right? They're trying to build a roster where there wasn't anything before. But this was a roster that was already decent. It wasn't good enough, but it was pretty decent. And you look now, their quarterback is a kid who has been here. Most of their top receivers were already here. Their top running back, who's going to be an all Big 12 kid, was already here. Jacob Rodriguez, their star linebacker, was already here. Actually, their whole linebacking core was already here, other than, edge rusher linebacker David Bailey. So, but all that to say, like, they were very particular about what do we need and what do we not need, and how can we prioritize the resources that we have to be ready for these individual swings. And again, like, anybody can throw money around, but I think that the way that they did it ended up being really, really smart and thoughtful. And now again, like, people are like, well, it's the best money roster you can buy. Well, dude, they're top 5 for the 3rd time in program history. Like, this is one of the best investments that any college football team has ever made. And I think that it's a testament to them. And you look at, again, I mean, if you want to look at like the SP Plus analytic rankings, like, they are number 3 right now in that. They are, from a roster perspective and efficiency perspective, competitive with anybody in college football. And actually, by the way, I'll say, ahead right now of everybody in the SEC. Now, again, obviously matchups, all this sort of stuff you get into, but like, it is a testament to them that they managed to take it and get to this point.
Number 1 in stop rate. I mean, you watch them in these games that are, you go into it going, maybe it's going to be close against BYU, and then you very quickly realize, no, this is
they just can't move the ball. Like, there's nowhere to go. In FEI right now, they're number 1 in defense, ahead of Ohio State. Like, we've watched Ohio State's defense and what they're doing to people, and according to a lot of these metrics, which are opponent adjusted, like, Tech is just putting people into the ground.
The Jacob Rodriguez story, it's pretty unreal. I mean, he needs true Heisman Trophy consideration, and I know that's very well documented in Lubbock, but can you tell our audience his story? Because I'm not sure that the average fan really knows kind of the full extent of it, of like starting off as a quarterback at Virginia and how he's been able to turn into this playmaking machine in the middle of that defense, who wasn't part of this unbelievable transfer portal haul, and is in a lot of ways why this transfer portal haul has been able to work, because they had pieces like him that were behind it and already in place.
So Jacob Rodriguez is from Wichita Falls, probably about 2 hours from Lubbock, also kind of West Texas, it's considered. He eventually, or he initially rather, went to Virginia as a quarterback out of high school, like a super dynamic quarterback in that region, one of the best players in Wichita Falls at that time. Plays quarterback, doesn't love it, doesn't go very well. He actually transfers to Texas Tech as a walk-on, and because he just wants to be closer to home, wants to be in an environment that's better for him. And he actually like sleeps on his brother's floor while he first comes back to to Texas Tech. He takes out loans so that he can afford to go to school there, and ultimately he's kind of identified as somebody that the staff's like, hey, I mean, like, maybe you should try another position, because you're a great athlete, but you're probably not going to play here at quarterback, but we might have opportunities for you at other positions. So he moves to linebacker. I've spoken to his initial linebackers coach, Josh Bookbinder, who's now at TCU, who has another great linebacker over there. And the big thing is, like, he is somebody who comes into that, of course, with the mind of a quarterback. And so, he's able to, identify a defense, he's able to set, protect, like, just do all this stuff. He's able to attack opposing offenses in a way that's very unique, because he can read things in a way that's just unique to linebackers. I remember actually, I was out there at the campout at Texas Tech before they played BYU, and people camped out literally from Sunday to Friday, waiting to pull tickets for that game. And players came through, and there was one kid who had his Xbox out and had NCAA 25 out. And when Jacob Rodriguez came through, he actually like challenged him to a game. And actually, like, they only played one drive, but Jacob Rodriguez, just for some context, has forced 7 fumbles, which leads the nation, and also has 4 interceptions as well. 11 total forced turnovers, and by the way, 2 forced fumble recoveries in addition. So they play one drive of NCAA 25, and on the second play, Jacob Rodriguez intercepts a pass and returns it for a touchdown.
Of course.
And I spoke to him after about that, and he's like, yeah, I mean, like, he tried to throw verts right into cover too. Like, what was he thinking? And I'm like, dude, he was just playing a video game. Like, he wasn't thinking about this. But that's the way that Jacob Rodriguez plays defense, right? Like, he just recognizes and understands, like, how to win in that way on that side of the ball. So unbelievable story. Again, like, he's over 100 tackles already. He was a great player last year as well, but on a defense that was bottom 10 in the country, and now on a defense that's top 10 in the country and top 1 arguably in the country. He is the guy who kind of stirs the drink. David Bailey is probably the best player on the defense, but I think that it's one of those things, right, where when you have a guy who makes everything happen, who makes all the right calls, who is such a playmaker, like, Jacob Rodriguez has been that level of difference maker for Texas Tech.
There's almost like a Manti Te'o element to it in some ways. Real wife, though, unlike, we don't need
no comment. And by the way, if you watched one Texas Tech game, you probably have heard his wife is active military and flies Black Hawk helicopters. I'm very happy that they're getting that attention. I probably don't need to hear that story again.
Every time you watch Texas Tech, it gets brought up. Kiss on the sideline. We get it. He's been married for 2 years. He's an adult.
And his wife is amazing. But, we've heard the story.
Yeah, we have. Can Texas Tech win a national championship?
No, it's a good question because, I mean, look, when I talked to them over the offseason, and I said in my story, they told me our goal is to make the Big 12 title game. That is our goal. That's what this is for, because we can sell everything else. Like, we have great facilities, we have great coaches, we have great players come through our program. You get to be close with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, all this stuff, right? But they don't have major trophies to sell. They have never won the Big 12 since it was founded in 1996. They haven't won an outright conference championship since 1955. So, like, that's what we're talking about here. So their goal was to make it to Arlington and have a chance to win a Big 12 title. But I think that with the way that they've played, and also, just to be frank, some of the flaws that other teams in college football have shown, like, I think it does change the calculus a little bit. Because, look, I think that Texas Tech is, if they're not the best defense in college football, they're at worst top 3. Like, they are crazy good. I don't care if you're playing Ole Miss. I don't care if you're playing Georgia. I think they're going to cause a lot of issues for any opposing offense that they face. They are the number 1 rush defense in college football by a mile, and I think that would hold up against anybody. Now, offensively, I think that they're very good. I think that they're actually maybe becoming a little underrated because of some of the struggles that they had whenever Baron Morton was dealing with some injuries. Now, Morton is still dealing with some of those injuries, but the emergence of their running back Cam Dickey, I think, has been pretty big for them. They have a downfield dynamic passing attack. And so I think that the biggest thing is this. I think you look at any team in college football, they can be pulled into a slog with Texas Tech. And, I think that they can pull anybody into a low scoring game, into an ugly game. And then at that point, it's, can you create some explosive plays? And I think Texas Tech can do that against almost anybody. Not necessarily with consistency against maybe the Ohio State level of defense, but I think that they can create some opportunities there. So, when you start talking about national championship, the biggest thing to me is, like, let's think back to the 4-team playoff. You have to win 2 games in order to do that. Winning 4 is a little tougher, just in terms of depth, right? Texas Tech's top 22, I'd probably compare with anybody favorably in college football, and they have good depth. I don't know that they have elite depth to go through 4 games. That's probably my biggest question for winning a national championship. But depending on the path, depending on the matchups, I think matchups have never been more important in college football than they are right this second. I mean, they're going to give themselves a chance. And, I've talked with some Tech people and some Tech buddies, and I'm like, honestly, like, just if you get a crack at Georgia or even Ohio State or just one of these powers, I mean, honestly, maybe the SEC powers are more important for you to get a crack at, right? The Alabamas or the Georgias. Like, I think that Tech could beat them, absolutely. And what does that do for yourself and the perception of your program heading forward if you go into the playoff and beat Georgia and have a chance to contend for a national championship? It's the sort of thing that'll carry over for years to come.
It's the type of team that's going to be so interesting come playoff time, assuming that they're there, just because of the gatekeeping that could go on with teams like this, the fact that there's a certain level of jealousy that opposing fan bases are going to have, that they've been able to do this as quickly as they have. And, there's gatekeeping that comes with that in itself too. But they're just really, really interesting. And I can't wait to see what happens with this Texas Tech team. I'm contractually obligated to get you out with this question. Where does Lane Kiffin end up in 2026?
Oh man. Well, let me preface with this. I know how SEC coaching searches work. I know that everybody wants to make a statement with their hire more than anything else. It's a little crazy to me that probably the highest paid coach in college football is going to be one who hasn't actually won anything at anywhere. He has never won a conference championship. He's never won a national championship. This is the first year he's going to make a playoff. And by the way, he's maybe going to leave the team before that even happens. A little crazy. The brand of Lane Kiffin is very strong. Let's say that. All that said, I mean, I was talking to some people earlier that were it's probably legitimately a one-third decision. Anything could happen. I think that probably a couple weeks ago, I was thinking it was going to be staying at Ole Miss. I mean, here's the thing, right? You do this giant documentary, this giant media tour to show how much Ole Miss and Oxford has embraced you and helped you become your best self and all this sort of stuff, and how your daughter implored you to stay here, and then you're just gonna do all this and leave. But I mean, I think it's becoming harder, frankly, to come back with a straight face, just with the way that all this is going. So if you had to ask me today, I probably would say Florida, but who knows with that guy, man? Who knows?
I've stopped assuming that I know exactly what's in store. I would bet he's going to return, but I don't think LSU, but Florida would be more realistic. So yeah, it's crazy. You bring up that stat. I looked this up because I did 5 stats that would help the fan bases who don't get Lane cope. Basically, make you feel better.
I love it.
He's not that good. He's fine. And that was the last one that I came to was look at all the coaches that are making 8 figures. Exclude Belichick because he's one of one.
Yeah.
Every one of them have coached in a conference championship and a playoff. Yeah. And he hasn't. And obviously, different situation at USC, a team that would have played in conference championship. They had Pete Carroll era sanctions. And we understand what he inherited at Ole Miss. But it is interesting that with the numbers that he could potentially make, man, you've never even seen him on that stage.
Well, and by the way, in a year where James Franklin got fired, for Lane Kiffin to be the belle of the ball is it's a little something. It's a little something. Because again, I mean, I'm sure Blaine has it, but Lane hasn't played well against the teams that can match or exceed his talent. That's just, and most teams don't. I want to be clear about that, right? It's not like there's a magic key that you can just push to suddenly beat Georgia or anything. But I don't know. It's he hasn't. And the thing that he's done is he's raised the floor a lot. And this has been an Ole Miss team that's had the most success that they've had since quite literally pre-integration. But there also, I think, is some context that I give a lot of credit to Ole Miss's boosters and collective for being very aggressive very early. I think that's a part of the story that maybe hasn't been told enough about how Ole Miss has gotten to where they're at. But I don't know. It's one of those things, like you said, that's a smart idea to kind of bring up the stats that help people cope. Because I think that whoever ends up with Lane Kiffin, that's going to be a solid hire. I think that whoever doesn't end up with Lane Kiffin is probably going to be able to have a solid hire if they're smart with their process. And, I think that in this moment, we are so obsessed with the idea of making a statement about what your job is, as opposed to trying to win. And, sometimes that works, and sometimes you get Brian Kelly'd.
Very true. Very true. Shehan, you're the best, man. Everyone go check out Shehan's work at cbssports.com. We'll do it again soon, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get to the rest of the podcast, I want to talk to you guys about Kalshi. This is something that is blowing up right now. Maybe you've seen people reference Kalshi in relation to a lot of different things that are going on in the world. And basically, this is a place where you can make money off of predictions. What do we do on these preview pods? We predict things. We tell you, hey, this is how you would bet here. This is how you would bet there. This isn't betting. This is sports trading. This is the ability to make predictions and say, hey, I can make money off of that. If you go to Kalshi right now, you can see that they have markets for a variety of different things. You can predict who's going to be the next head coach at UNC or Penn State, or these different things that there are markets for. And the cool thing about this, all 50 states you can do this in. They are legal at the federal level. It's not a state-by-state deal. And so Kalshi has just a wide variety of things that you can make picks on, make predictions on, and win money. It's a really, really cool source to be able to kind of flex some of those prediction muscles. I know all of you listening to this, you guys can see into the crystal ball. So use the promo code SDS, get signed up today, and make yourself some money on Kalshi. All right, well, lad of the week. Thought about going in a lot of different directions, and I think I just ended up trolling. I already said who mine was earlier. You want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
James Franklin. Big game, okay. James. Not sure if you heard, he got another head coaching job. Yeah, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
James Franklin, Virginia Tech's new head coach, he had the $49 million buyout, but it had offset money in it. And he, according to multiple reports, renegotiated to $9 million and basically said, Penn State and I, we're good now. Like he's cashed out with them. It's a lump sum payments, I think, but it's still going to be spread out. So it's not just like a $9 million check. And I mean, I'm on record saying I think he should have done the Dan Mullen thing, gone in media, reset for 3 years, collect that buyout money. And then all of a sudden, like people are talking about you every coaching carousel. You kind of see where your value is. But his ego is too big to do that. So he took the Virginia Tech job. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense for both parties. Actually think if there was a power conference job that he was going to end up at, it was going to be a place like Virginia Tech, who just needs a rebuilding job. It's so ironic that they hired someone off of a long time James Franklin disciple was Brent Pry. And then they go back to hiring just James Franklin for this role. But yeah, I was like seeing some of the tweets that came out from his introduction. And I know, who was it? It was like, it was Audrey Snyder, who has covered like Penn State for a long time. And I was looking at some of these quotes just because I wanted to see, like, was Franklin going to throw any shots at Penn State? Like that's all I really wanted to see. And he's talking about like, there needs to be alignment. There's no other way to do it, which, okay, maybe a little bit.
Must be nice.
Yeah. Sure. You didn't have alignment, guy. He said having an airport on campus is going to be important. I love it. The Penn State airport situation with them like not having a long enough runway to be able to fly in there, and then they have to like drive an hour to be able to get to, what is it, like Harrisburg or something like that, and then fly, is such a funny thing that he complained about so much. And it was just, it's kind of baffling that one, he complained about it as much as he did, and that two, Penn State for whatever reason couldn't fix this issue. And so it's just amazing that he goes to another job and does the thing where immediately he's going to like go back to the well of like, hey, this is going to make our situation so much better.
You know what though? And maybe I'm just Mr. Hopium, but that is a dig that only the target audience understands. Cause I didn't even really get that when you first said it. Oh yeah. Okay. I think I remember that. And so I'll say this, like, it's first off, it's funny to mention, great job. Number one, we got an airport. That's funny. But remember, I will say,
last year in the playoff, SMU, like all like Bryson DeChambeau and like all those SMU boosters like couldn't even fly in to the airport.
Oh yes.
And it had to drive an hour, take a shuttle. It's just like logistical nightmare that for whatever reason Penn State still does.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, this goes to why their environment at Penn State's so good, because it is kind of ducked off in the state. But anyway, it's kind of the Texas A&M of Pennsylvania. That being said, it wouldn't be shocking to me, man. This is a little bit of a take as well. If for that program, James Franklin is the best hire of this coaching cycle.
Sure.
Because what I've talked about kind of over and over again about that job in that area is if you can recruit, they're so under recruiting that area. And we're seeing, like we've talked about, Maryland come in and get some of these guys, and related my line of the week is from that area as well. That's what James Franklin's good at, is recruiting. So you can raise your floor simply by getting the guys to stay home, and he could do that. And they've been such a joke for so long that I think a floor raising coach is what he is. And that's exactly what they need.
Yeah, very much so. DMV is an underrated recruiting area in the college football like geographical landscape. I don't know what the top 100 per capita is, but the DMV would probably be up there. Obviously, it's not as talent rich as like a Florida, Texas, a California, or something like that. But just in terms of like centrally located elite recruits, there is something to be said for that. And look, James Franklin probably going to do a lot of great things. Probably going to win a lot of games in the ACC. Why wouldn't he? And also, you don't have this insurmountable hurdle standing in the way in the ACC in the way that James Franklin very much did in the Big Ten. What's the force that's going to prevent Virginia Tech from being an 8-win team on a yearly basis? Like, what's the thing that's just going to be the bully year in, year out that's going to keep him
and guess
down?
what? We get to see a culture off between him and Dabo, and we get to see a late game blunder off between him and Cristobal. This is perfect.
Cheers,
this is
man.
Perfect.
Let's get
They're
as
gonna lose
many.
to Georgia Tech every time.
They might. Yeah, I don't know who the annual rivalries are for Virginia Tech. I haven't gone down that road yet, but we need Virginia Tech and Penn State to be able to get on the schedule with one another. Like that needs to happen at some point. It is so baffling though to think that Franklin had this $49 million ticket that he was sitting on that he would have made through 2031. And essentially is like, no, I gotta stay in coaching. I get it. He's young. If the market's there, it's funny to me that he thought Florida State could come calling. It's like they're gonna pay a coach $52 million to walk away, and then they're gonna hire the coach that had the $49 million buyout from Penn State. And that
Love talking about alignment and saying I want to go to FSU.
Right? Sure. Good luck. Anyway, wish the best for James Franklin. Obviously, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I mean, he's just, like I said, I think he's a fine enough coach. You could make allegories to Brian Kelly, where Brian Kelly ends up somewhere, right? Like we joked about Northwestern, goes to some random like Purdue like school. He could just make them a 9-10 win team, and that's all their fans want. Sometimes winning a championship is not it, guys. I think he's going to work really well there.
Can I give you one more intrusive thought? And
Please.
By the way, Shane Beamer not returning to Virginia Tech. We can officially put that one to rest. That is not happening. I had a thought. One, James Franklin should hire Joe Moorhead to be his OC. And if he doesn't, Joe Moorhead going to South Carolina would be really interesting. Really interesting for Shane Beamer with that vacancy. Just saying, just throwing it out there. I realize Akron, not exactly lighting up the world, but like what Joe Moorhead has done as an OC in actual recent memory, not like Gus Malzahn memories of like 2010. Like what he's been able to do as an OC, I still would, even like at Oregon, like when they won at Ohio State in 2019. What was that? No, that was after that. That was 2021. He did that. Just one of those things that I kind of started thinking about as I looked at Brad Crawford's list of potential OCs for South Carolina. Shane Beamer, bring Joe Moorhead back to the SEC, and timing might be right with what's going on at Akron.
I think it's actually a perfect fit for him. If you look at kind of the style of OC he likes, Joe Moorhead's like the best version of that, like Luggins, Shula style of guy. Not to like get too deep into the scheme, but that makes a lot of
style.
sense.
Wait, what?
Well,
Shula
like,
style.
The execution was much worse under Shula. But I mean, again, we talked about it. It took him a while to figure out in 2024. Took kind of the Texas A&M game, and then they caught on fire as far as learning the offense. It's a complex system. Get a little bit of throw it on a dime going on. I think that could work out.
Was that a Trace McSorley reference?
Of course. Also, having Saquon Barkley does help a little bit. Don't worry about that. You could find one of those in South Carolina.
Of course you can. Found it in New Jersey. Totally.
This is the best segue of all time. Speaking of a guy who is an absolute swamp monster at South Carolina, speaking of a guy who is, of course, from the DMV, my lad of the week, Nick Harbor. Nick Harbor is the classic guy who you play as in NCAA or CFP, as they're calling it now, to avoid the lawsuits or whatever. Classic guy who you see the speed rating, you see the size, you go, I'm going to turn this guy into a tailback and throw screen passes to him and run the triple option and do all kinds of illegal NSFW things to my friends with the offense that this guy can run. But in real life, these guys never really pan out, right? These guys that are these physical freaks, that are track stars, that play all these different sports. And yet somehow, amid this disastrous South Carolina season, he is 19th in the SEC in receiving yards. He's leading his team in yards and touchdowns, despite not leading them in catches. That's because he has a 21-yard average per reception. And So he's developing he's the bright spot for the South Carolina offense this year, and it's the least likely guy, right? We knew Sellers. He didn't really pan out. The run game we felt pretty good about hasn't really panned out. Some of the other guys haven't really stepped up, but Harbor has been there for them in these big moments, and we saw that twice against A&M. So this is kind of an all-around line of the week for him. Number one, he balled out in a big matchup against a really big defense, had that 80-yard touchdown to kind of close out the half, was almost a victim of police brutality, got his way out of that. We talked about that last pod where that cop kind of yelled at him, and he was able to, while grabbing his hamstring or his leg, basically walk away and defuse that situation. A complete just glass case of emotions moment for him where he didn't react. He said, yes, sir, and kept it pushing, right? And so
did he? Do we know that?
I think anything but that would have resulted in much more. I think maybe he said, come on, man. That was probably as far as he went with that cop. But considering the cop instigated both times, I think he just kept walking, and that was awesome for him. But, we were talking about this a little bit off air. He also secured a massive 18-yard catch on 4th and 6 during South Carolina's comeback drive. So that game was just such an encapsulation of South Carolina's season where you get the hot start, you get the crazy turnovers, you get the big Nick Harbor play. He comes back and balls again. He gets injured in 2 different ways. He has like a hockey player style lower body injury after the 80-yard touchdown. He comes back in, takes a big fall on the sideline, and I believe you told me he stayed in College Station over the night.
Yeah, had a chest injury on that play where he was clearly hard fall, big time catch. How much do you think he said when they told him, "Hey, buddy, you're not going to be able to fly back with the team. You're going to have to stay overnight here"? He's like, "Do I have to? After what happened earlier? Are we sure that cop's going to come in here and just try and cut off my oxygen in here? We don't need that."
He wakes up to a Twilight Zone of Aggie fans doing weird hand gestures, and he's like, no, please, I just wanted to score a touchdown.
It's been through enough, man.
Yeah, staying in College Station after that game is worse than maybe either of those injuries, health scare aside. And it's like, man, what he has had to go through this season. Like I said, we think these guys are like these prima donnas that are 5 stars that are all in NIL, but he really does seem like he committed to South Carolina for football reasons because he likes the culture. He does seem like he's not quitting on his team, and he's making these big catches despite being banged up. And so shout out to him, man. He's a guy that I don't have to say, like we talked about with Sellers, I can't wait to see him somewhere else. I can't wait to see him at the next level. I love watching him at South Carolina, and whatever his future holds, I'm locked in, and I feel like he has been the 5-star that they hoped would show up.
I hope we get another year of him because I think there's still a lot left to be desired with his game, and they're still trying to maximize it. But when it's right, it's so fun to watch. And when you see him make a big time play like that, I actually think the 4th down catch was more impressive than the catch and run. You can do that type of stuff with him where he's just going to split a secondary and you're not going to be able to catch him. But being able to rise and make that catch in that spot, which was significant at that point in the game when South Carolina is trying to be able to come back after the inexplicable A&M turnover with the running back pass fumble. I do want good things for Nick Harbor, and it'd be fun to see him spend another year in Columbia, just working to develop all the intricacies of being a true wide receiver. And he's taken a nice step in that direction. But yeah, first 100-yard game of his career they had in that A&M game. So hopefully more of him.
And I'll say really quick, we've, I think, incorrectly said that Andy Reid is the guy who you don't want to, quote unquote, give more knives to. You don't want to give him all these, the Mecole Hardman. He doesn't often figure those guys out. I think the guy that you got to keep Nick Harbor away from if you're one of the division opponents is Sean Payton by a mile. If Sean Payton gets this guy in the NFL, it is going to be over for everybody else. He's going to find a way to have this guy playing long snapper and be wide open in the end zone. He's going to have him returning kicks from the concession stand. It is going to be nuts. So I think he could go to the NFL now if he wanted, because there are enough offensive-minded head coaches who are just imagine that guy on the Eagles. That would be terrifying. And so that being said, I do want to see him in college. I want to see him develop a little bit. I think he's good to stay at South Carolina, if the money's right, of course. But yeah, I'm so excited for this kid. And it looks like he's working hard, he's balling, and he's taking a punch and coming back.
Very much taking a punch, taking a shove, a bump, all the above. All right. Please leave us a 5-star review if you've never done so. That would make our day if you could do that. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at SetDownSouth, at TJ Guerra, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.